Welcome back to Bot Thoughts by AmTalkSoft. I'm Alex. Today we're talking about low-code, the category of platforms that promise to let anyone build software without writing much code or any code at all. It's a topic that splits rooms. Business teams love it. A lot of developers roll their eyes. And the market numbers are striking. Gartner projected the low-code platform market would reach $44.5 billion by 2026. That's not a niche. That's a category. Sam is with me today. Sam has worked with development teams at companies that have adopted low-code platforms and also companies that have tried and walked away. Sam, what's your first reaction when someone says low-code?
My first reaction is to ask, for what? Because low-code is not one thing. It's a spectrum that runs from no-code tools like Zapier, where you're connecting apps in a flowchart with no programming knowledge at all the way to platforms like Retool or OutSystems, where you're writing some code, SQL, JavaScript, Python snippets, but the infrastructure, the data bindings, the UI scaffolding, and the deployment are handled for you. Those are very different products solving very different problems. The marketing bundles them together because low code is a better headline than automation tool for business analysts. But technically and practically, they're not the same. So the answer to is low code the future depends almost entirely on which part of the spectrum you're talking about and what problem you're trying to solve.
Let's define the spectrum. Walk me through it from least technical to most.
At the no-code end, you have tools like Zapier, Make, formerly Integromat, and Airtable. These are genuinely no-code. You build workflows by connecting triggers and actions in a visual interface. When a new row is added to this spreadsheet, send a Slack message and create a Jira ticket. A 12-year-old can do this. The target users are operations teams, sales teams, marketers, people who know their business process and need to automate it but have no programming background. Then you have the visual application builders, Bubble, Webflow, AppSheet, Microsoft Power Apps. These let you build actual applications with custom data models, logic, and user interfaces. Some allow scripting. Webflow lets you write custom JavaScript. Power Apps has a formula language called PowerFX that resembles Excel. These are aimed at citizen developers, people with some analytical skills who can think logically but aren't software engineers. Then you have professional low-code platforms, Retool, OutSystems, Mendix, Appian. These are explicitly aimed at development teams. You write SQL to query your database. You write JavaScript to add custom logic, but you're not building the authentication system from scratch or managing your own deployment pipeline. The platform handles that. These can genuinely accelerate experienced developers building internal tools. So the spectrum goes zero code, some logic, developer augmentation. Very different things.
Where does low-code genuinely win? Where is it the right answer?
3 categories. First, internal tooling. This is the strongest case. According to Retool's State of Internal Tools report, the average developer spends roughly a third of their time building internal dashboards, admin panels, and CRUD interfaces that nobody outside the company ever sees. These tools are deeply unsexy. They're hard to prioritize, they're slow to build from scratch, and they don't need to be beautiful. A platform like Retool can get an internal admin tool from idea to production in hours instead of weeks. The ROI is real and measurable. Second, business process automation. If your company has a process that involves moving data between systems, approving requests, sending notifications, or generating reports, and that process is currently being done manually by a human clicking between tabs, a no-code automation tool is almost certainly the right answer. The cost of a Zapier subscription is nothing compared to the cost of the human hours it saves. Third, MVPs and prototypes. If you need to test whether a business idea has legs before investing 6 months of engineering time, a low-code or no-code tool can get you a working prototype in days. Some companies never graduate from the prototype. They just run the business on Bubble or Webflow for years. That's a perfectly legitimate choice. These are the scenarios where the technology genuinely earns its market cap.
But developers are famously skeptical of low-code. What's the substance behind that skepticism? It can't just be snobbery.
It's mostly not snobbery, though some of it is. The legitimate concern is what I'd call the ceiling problem. Every low-code platform has a ceiling, a point at which the thing you need to do is not expressible in the platform's constraints. And the ceiling is always lower than you think when you start, and you always hit it at the worst possible time. Imagine you've built your internal CRM on a no-code platform. It's been working great for 18 months. You have 5,000 customer records, your sales team loves it. Now your enterprise customer says they need a SOC 2-type II audit trail, every data access logged, every change timestamped, every export recorded with tamper-evident storage. That requirement is completely reasonable, but your no-code platform might not support it at all, or might only support it with a paid tier that costs more per month than a dedicated engineer would. You're now locked in. You've built a real business on a foundation you don't control. That's the ceiling problem, and it's not hypothetical, I've seen it happen.
So vendor lock-in is the core risk.
Vendor lock-in and debugging. On the lock-in side, when you build on a low-code platform, your business logic, your data model, your workflows, and often your data itself live inside that vendor's system. If the vendor raises prices, gets acquired, shuts down a feature, or goes bankrupt, you may have no exit path that doesn't require a full rebuild. That's a real risk. It's why enterprise low-code platforms like OutSystems and Mendix have invested heavily in data portability and export tooling, because they know it's the question every procurement team asks. On the debugging side, when something goes wrong in handwritten code, you have a stack trace. You have a debugger. You can add logging. You can reason through the call stack. When something goes wrong inside a visual workflow or a generated runtime you don't have source access to, you're often stuck reading a cryptic error message from a black box. The platform's support team becomes your debugger. That's a painful dependency when you're in an incident at 2 in the morning.
Let's bring AI into this. There's an argument that tools like GitHub Copilot, Cursor, and Claude Code are essentially creating a new kind of low-code, where non-experts or junior developers can ship code much faster than before. Does that change the calculus?
It does change things, but in a subtle way. AI coding tools don't eliminate the need to understand code. They lower the activation energy to write it. A product manager who can describe what they want in English and review a Python script for obvious errors can now do things that would have required a contractor 6 months ago. That's real, and it's compressing the middle of the spectrum. But there's a key difference between AI-assisted code and a low-code platform. With AI-assisted code, the output is actual source code. You own it. You can put it in Git. You can deploy it anywhere. You can modify it with any tool. It has no platform ceiling. With a low-code platform, the output is a configuration inside someone else's system. The AI-assisted code model is actually eating the market for citizen developer tools, because the same person who might have reached for Bubble 3 years ago can now get Claude to write them a working Next.js app in 20 minutes. They're not a developer, but they can now own their code. That shift is real, and I think it will restructure the low-code market significantly over the next few years.
What about the enterprise end? Microsoft Power Platform has millions of users inside large companies. SAP, ServiceNow, Salesforce all have their own low-code layers. Is the enterprise case different?
The enterprise case is actually the strongest one for structured low-code, for a very specific reason: governance. In a large enterprise, you don't want every team writing their own Python scripts to connect to the customer database. You want a controlled, auditable, permissions-managed layer where business analysts can build workflows without touching production systems directly. Power Platform does this well inside the Microsoft ecosystem. ServiceNow does it for IT processes. Salesforce Flow does it for sales and service operations. These aren't competing with GitHub or V's code. They're competing with Excel macros and manual processes. That's a completely different market segment. The enterprise low-code tools succeed because they're embedded in ecosystems the company already has. They come with enterprise support contracts, and they handle compliance requirements out of the box. A Power Apps form connected to SharePoint with Azure Active Directory authentication is boring, but it's real, and it solves a real problem. I'd never advocate building a consumer-facing product on it, but for internal enterprise workflows, it often makes more sense than asking the engineering team to build a custom app.
So what's the verdict? How should a team think about whether to use a low-code platform?
3 questions. First, who will maintain this? If the answer is a business analyst who doesn't write code, then a low-code or no-code tool is probably right, as long as you've honestly assessed the ceiling. If the answer is our engineering team, then low-code saves them time on scaffolding, but they'll eventually want to own the code. Consider AI-assisted development instead. Second, what's your exit strategy? Before you build on any low-code platform, know what the migration path looks like if the platform fails you. Can you export your data? Can you export your logic in a readable format? If the answer is no, factor that lock-in risk into your decision. Third, what's the ceiling for this use case? Be specific. Not could we ever need something more complex, but what is the most complex thing this tool will need to do in the next 2 years? If you can answer that question honestly and the platform can handle it today, you're probably safe. Low code is a legitimate engineering choice. It's not the future of all software, but it's the right tool for a meaningful slice of the software problems that actually exist in the world. The mistake is treating it as a silver bullet on either side. Either low code will replace developers or low code is just for people who can't code. Both framings are wrong.
That's a genuinely useful framework. 3 questions. Who maintains it? What's the exit strategy? And what's the ceiling for this use case? Sam, this has been excellent. Thank you for the nuanced take. I think a lot of conversations about this end up in the wrong place because people are debating a version of low code that isn't the one actually in front of them. To everyone listening, we've linked the Gartner report and the Retool Internal Tools survey in the description. Both are worth reading if you're evaluating platforms. Thanks for listening to Bot Thoughts. If this was useful, subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get podcasts. We'll see you next week.
Thanks for having me. And to anyone currently maintaining a business on a spreadsheet and 3 Zapier automations that you're terrified to touch, you're not alone, and there is a path forward.